Good morning, everyone. Youngstown's Talk Channel. Joe and Kelin here today. Good morning, Miss Kelin. How are you?
Good morning. Good. How are you?
Excellent.
Hump day.
God, why?
Do you remember that commercial?
Why?
Joe hates any and all forms of cliche.
Yes.
Sayings.
Yes.
Holidays.
Holidays.
Anything that brings joy, really.
That's not joy. That is faux joy.
Faux joy.
Faux joy.
Who are you to say what is and is not joy?
I am
to
the
someone?
arbiter of all things logical, so I shall roll it out.
So if I say something brings me joy, you can say false. You do not feel joy.
No. If you say that eating a Snickers bar brings you joy, I'm going to say a Snickers bar is terrible and there's not great utility in it.
But can it still bring me joy?
Well, I don't care if killing yourself brings you joy. That's more of a
still joy.
It's fine. If I tell you that I feel joy when I cut my arm off, you're not going to be like, well, you keep doing you.
I'm going to say that's weird, but I mean,
100%. So once you know Snickers bars kills you, right? Robs you of your health and well-being and makes you feel terrible. That's a little odd. Go enjoy your torture.
In the moment you feel good.
Oh, okay. All right.
And then you're like,
what if the dopamine that's released when I saw off my own arm brings me in the short term, like tons of euphoric highs? That's my joy.
Then would it be a fair and true statement to say at the moment you probably feel joy?
Yeah.
But it's not a good thing?
Yeah. Human beings enjoy torturing themselves. They doing damage to their thing. And I think that's stupid. So
it's odd how we spiraled from hump day. Good Lord.
You did it. You brought it. And this is I had this conversation. My kid's in literature. He's taken some classes at MCCTC, and the technicals on literature really annoy me with how our language is and how composition is. But the philosophies of literature are like I am fascinated with. And so he's doing, plot device and construction of good storytelling and whatnot. Huh. One of the things they're studying are fallacies, right? You familiar with the list of fallacies in literature and in culture?
Probably not.
Okay. We'll talk a little bit about because it was interesting because
I was going to make a jab there, but I won't.
Yeah, don't do it. Don't do it. But anyway, he was talking about straw man and red herring and what's that called? When you when you attack the person, I can't think of the name. But anyway, so what we did was we turned on the television and we waited until one of the fallacies was used in place of logic.
Oh, I bet that didn't take long.
No, it was every freaking sentence.
Yeah.
Every sentence. Oh. So in debate class, when you hold your argument and you basically take on another person, the rules is that you don't resort to any fallacy arguments, right? You have to stick to pure logic in order to, see who's right, who's wrong, who has a better argument against. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you, in the political climate, and the news climate, and social media climate, it's all fallacy. Every one of them is fallacy. And so like that, it was cool because, you say these things, but to be able to give demonstration of why, how it's being used in conversations and why it's being used in conversations. And so there, when you do strict logical argumentation, you can never be wrong. 0 times you can be wrong. Okay. Because you're either going to arrive at unknowns or you're going to arrive at a truth, and there's no really in between. Right. Yeah. What's cool is like every time we read comments on here, I'm going to start telling you which fallacy is being demonstrated in front of us. So I will teach you the fallacy list just by having people engage with us here today.
Oh yeah. There was a good one yesterday, which we sort of ignored and brushed over because it was so ridiculous, but maybe we should bring it up as a teaching point. So yesterday morning, you all may or may not have seen, we were talking about not idolizing people,
right?
That we tend to put celebrities or well-known people on this pedestal when really they're just people. They have faults, they mess up like all of us do. And as we were listing certain people, you had talked about Steve Jobs, that could be kind of controversial depending on how somebody feels about Steve Jobs, but you can't deny he's done some really incredible things. And I said, yeah, look at Martin Luther King Jr., known for some incredible things, incredible speeches, a failed human being. You know, it's been shown that he beat women and may have slept with multiple women, hookers, whatever. And because I said that, I was called a racist. And this person said I was a racist and what, I should go put on my MAGA hat or something like that. I don't know, which is interesting. So did we mention people of different races? Yep. Was what we said true, that all people are human and they have their faults regardless of doing good things as well? Yep. So where did that go off the rails into Crazyville?
So that one isn't even an intellectual debate. Okay. That is just, I don't like that you said something, and let me look at the tools and weapons I have at my disposal, and I'll use one that usually works. And like, oh, the calling someone a racist thing. Oh, they're black, right?
Yeah.
And so you're not. And so I'm going to pick up the racist hammer. I'm going to bop you over the head with it. And that used to work because everybody else is like, right?
Yeah.
Now everybody's a racist and everything is racism. So that when you bop the hammer, they're like, oh yeah, that's everybody.
Yeah, we're like, whatever.
Yeah,
keep scrolling.
So what? And now it's really, I would just give, I'd give a recommendation to that person is if you got a really effective tool, especially socially, conversationally, don't use that same tool every time because you're going to waste its effectiveness the first couple times you use it, and it's never going to work the same way again. So you got to put it behind glass and reserve it for an instance that is real so that then people believe you and people give weight to it when you use that word. We used to have somebody, I would go through the office and I would teach a new concept that was, I've been dealing with this stuff for 20 plus years. And so I have a library of knowledge about technical things that maybe you only see once every 5 years. So people coming out of school now have never seen any of that, so they don't know it existed. And what was interesting is this was something, it literally only twice in my entire career that I ever saw this thing, this reason and this solution. And so I went to the office and I told everybody, well, if this happens, then it's for this back end reason. And here's what you do about it. Would you not then in that same week, we had 4 diagnoses for the thing that you didn't even know existed before. Right.
Yeah.
So it's almost like now that you know that there's a complication, now you're looking for that complication. Now you push everything into the basket of the thing now that you now knew. So if you're like, hey, you know what? I'm really bad at making arguments, but really works. Oh, racism. I just learned that this racism thing, I can beat somebody over, insulting and stuff like that. I'll use that one. And then it becomes the only weapon that you pull out of your tool belt.
Yeah.
Right. And by the third time I saw this thing that only happened twice in 2 years, I was like, I don't even want to believe you on the third and fourth diagnosis with that, because that is super unlikely that that's happened. And it ruined that. And I haven't seen that, that diagnosis since.
Yeah. It's almost one of those things where it's like, tell me you've lost the debate without telling me you've lost the debate. Like the moment somebody is bringing up information and your go-to is name calling or belittling or anything of that nature, I almost feel like everybody can look around and be like, we're good here. We're good. Move on. I won. Like you have nothing. You have nothing else. And you're showing that immediately. You're done.
All right. The first fallacy I'm going to name here. This is Emery Stone says, where did you get your info from? The MLK stuff. Okay. So this fallacy is the fallacy of authority, right? And so what this does is when there are arguments under the legitimacy of the information, right? So let's just say you were an expert at something. And so when you say something, you're coming from an expertise, the authority has to be recognized by both people in the argument. And so if I can't beat the data, I can either go after you personally, and I can basically say you're an idiot and don't know what you're talking about, and you've lied, cheated, and stealed in your life and ruin you personally, or I can go after your authority, that a lot of people disagree with you and whatever. So the fallacy of authority means that if you got it from Fox News, that the information is different than what you would get on CNN, or different than you get on a government research paper, or a university research paper, or a government findings request, right? So if that person says that MLK was an upstanding citizen, right? That's their argument, even if it's a passive aggressively presented, and you say different, right? Then you have to defend yourself against their fallacy that all of your sourcing on what you know about MLK, and then it's this sort of like, it's almost like a court proceeding where you're going down the rabbit hole of proving the thing, then proving the source of the thing, then proving the personal of the thing. And by the time you get to the bottom of it, nobody's made smarter at all, right?
Like in my head, I'm playing it out like, where'd you get your info? Well, you can go online, and I have seen police reports.
Yes.
From years and years of whatever year this was. You can find police reports of people pressing charges of a woman he hit and whatever. So obviously they're going to say, well, that could be fake. Well, that could be made up. Maybe it's not a real source. And we could go all day on that, to which I would have to just say, you know what? I didn't put it on the internet. Is it fake? Possible. Is it also possible that a human being made mistakes in their life? Yes. And so what I wouldn't understand, what I would struggle to maybe ask them is, if all humans have faults and nobody is perfect, why the pushback when one person gets told, okay, they did something great and they had a couple faults? But no, can't even hear that. Can't even hear it. It must not be true. Well, you're going to have a hell of a time proving to me that
really, my only objection is when people use absolutes. Now, you said that it may have happened, which means you're leaving it open to being wrong about what you read. And that is a pure version of debate. You're not defending it as it didn't happen. But on the other side, it's like, no, he was an upstanding citizen, and I'm going to believe that until you can prove otherwise. That is an absolute. And
until you prove otherwise, you're a racist.
So exactly. But that's the mode of discourse is unachievable for anyone to either win or lose any battle, because we've impugned every authority. There's no standardization for who is trusted and who is not. You're going to have a group of people who don't trust Fox News, and you're going to have a group of people that don't trust MSNBC. So that when they say things, they're only catering to the group who will believe them. So biblical authority, right? There's a certain group of people who will believe it absolutely, and people that will disagree with it absolutely. Now we have even legal standards, right? We have sanctuary cities that don't agree that just because there's a law that they have to follow it. So now there's a group of people who think they should follow the law, and there's certain people who think they shouldn't follow the law. This is where anarchy comes from, when there's no standardization of language, in being able to say things that are untrue, like you're racist, and not have to defend it using it just as the term. Standards of social conduct standards, what's acceptable by how we treat one another and how we present ourselves in public. Rules, law. I mean, with no standards, that is the definition of anarchy.
Yeah. And then you have the fun little, I'm going to throw this out there, whether it's the name calling, the false statement, whatever. And then I say, bye, and you leave. To me, that's just as much of a wrongdoing, I guess. If you're going to come to a debate and you're going to name call and you're not going to have sources, you're going to do all these things that could help you lose that debate. Saying something untrue and bolting is right there too. Like, tell me you're a coward without telling me you're a coward.
Oh, no. Listen, I count that as a cliche. Anyway, moving on.
You hate cliches.
Yeah, I do. They're lazy, mentally lazy. All right. So what else do you want to talk about?
Speaking of ridiculousness.
Yes.
Did you see any of the Pam Bondi Senate oversight hearing?
Yeah.
I can't stand these shows. Why do we do this? Why? On Senate confirmation hearings, Senate oversight hearings, anything of that nature where someone is brought in, put in a hot seat, and everybody talks about what we're all doing right now, is the biggest waste of time. I don't know why we do them. Why don't you just take Republicans and Democrats and let them argue for a couple hours and put it on TV?
So, okay, well, here's the two paths, right? this is a responsibility for departments within the executive to make a presentation to the legislative with what's happening in their departments.
Mhm.
That gives the legislators a chance to ask questions. That gives them a chance to respond, right?
Ideally.
And so,
Mhm.
ideally, so if there were no cameras and they were just doing the function of their job, there would be curiosities from legislators that want to know how things are going so that they can plan appropriately in the legislation part of things. Ideally, again.
Yeah.
When you turn the cameras on and you make it performative, none of that stuff happens. So the true function of what these hearings are supposed to be, a reporting feature, right,
Mhm.
becomes just performance and theater. And so the best, if you just flip off the cameras and know that they don't have an audience to perform,
Yeah.
maybe some of that happens, but then you lose the transparency where the people get to see what's being talked about. So you want transparency, but then you get performative behaviors.
Yeah.
If you flip the cameras off, then we know what's being said, and then they could be doing backroom deals and negotiating stuff without the public being able to see that. Double-edged sword there.
Yeah, because are we actually getting anything we need with the cameras
No,
on?
with it being performative,
Yeah.
everything's going to be in confrontation and nothing's going to get done. But that is the cost of transparency.
So what would you recommend? No cameras or cameras?
Well, I think you do both, right? You basically have to have a portion of what gets discussed without people watching and get the important things off the table where if there are true curiosities. So if the public doesn't want to see you and I getting along, and when everybody can see us, we've got to fight because we got to rise to the expectations of our constituencies.
Mhm.
We go back behind closed doors and they can't see it. And I was like, hey, I was meaning to ask you, I can't do it out there because I'm going to get criticized for it, but how's the blah, blah, blah going? And then you can say it. So that solves that part of the equation. But then there has to be someone in the closed door room that is both knows the sensitive nature of it, and they're looking for things that constituents don't want going on behind closed doors. So if you get a negotiation behind it, the public should see, that person's responsibility would be to out that. So it's more complicated that way. Right.
Mhm.
And I don't trust that our watchdog is going to actually perform the duty. So you almost can't have it. So we're stuck right where we are right now.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't even take it. I was like, oh, let's see what's going on here. And I found myself just fast forward. And I don't even know if there was any actual information. It's one representative just giving statements about how they feel. And then Pam Bondi deflecting, giving a smart remark, trying to push back and say, how could you ask me that when you're doing this and you're doing that? And then somebody on the Republican side says something bad about Democrats, not actually anything having to do with why we're there, and they get along. And then it's a Democrat's turn for a question, which really isn't a question. It's a passive-aggressive way to push their own agenda.
You know who's in charge of this?
Who?
Voters. If the voters look at what your representative did, and when they had the stage to ask an important question, they wasted the opportunity. They get rid of them and say, "Hey guys, we're not going to vote for any of you who just want to be famous rather than have good government." And then you vote them out, just like consumers. You basically vote for products and services based on your pocketbook. You either spend money with people who are doing it right, and you wash people out that are doing the job wrong. But it's the culture of voters of looking at politics as a sport rather than a utility and function that's important to our everyday life. We're flirting with this to the point, and it's ramping up to a certain point that we're not going to know what all of this stuff is supposed to be doing. So then we can't measure it and find out if someone's doing a good job or not.
Yeah, it's a sport and reality TV.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it is.
Yeah. So let's just say someone broke the rules and they get called into the Senate for a hearing where all of the representatives get to beat up on them and chastise them for breaking a rule and whatever. We think that's an actual function of law enforcement, someone who's going to lay it down and then, lay down the rules on them. But then they go through this hearing. It was exposed that you were a bad person. And we were like, wait a minute, they just got to walk out the door and there's going to be no repercussions for what they did. I'd like to be a part of this, in name only chastising and then no repercussions for it.
Oh yeah. It's a joke. Anything they do. And when I say they, I mean everybody in the government, anything you do, even if it's called out on, is still eventually swept under the rug. It's eventually just pushed aside. If somebody says somebody did one thing, then they could say, well, and then you did this. And then they all say, oh, okay, truce. Like, it's just, it all feels so pointless.
Yeah, it is. It is.
It is.
Julie says name calling and personal attacks are a dead end for me.
Mm-hmm.
And what about name calling like Nazi for Trump and fascist and what, those name callings too, or not?
Yeah.
How do you feel about Stephen Miller's statement that Trump has plenary authority over the military? Does it raise an eyebrow? It depends how far you let this go. Okay. And when you consider what a insurrection, rebellion, when you have, it goes from people operating within what you would assume if you had a problem with something, you would air your grievance in a standardized way. Once you go beyond that and you have rebellion, the government has a due process for behaviors beyond what is, acceptable. And I think as long as the opposition keep ramping it up, they get really close to some things that government has powers to be able to tamp down. And yes, it raises an eyebrow, but it also raises an eyebrow how any city would tolerate going from grievance to true, if you're there are very, like, you lose your life if you go to a certain level of conspiracy against the government, right? Mm-hmm. And we've never really gotten to that far because, think historically how many people have lost their life because they worked against the federal government. It was not just grievances, not just voicing your displeasure and writing your congressman and having them on board to do it the due process way. If you're not happy with the due process way, you take it upon yourself to work against the government. And now you have conspiracy. Now you have huge punishments. So if the military needs to be used to tamp that down and show the public that it's not acceptable to ramp it up beyond what's, the acceptable standard, then yes. But I would argue that I don't want us to be in this position because I want law enforcement not to tolerate to the point where it gets so out of control that you do have people guilty of federal crimes that have huge ramifications.
Yeah. Dana says it's gone too far already.
It has.
So am I understanding this, that we're talking about sending in soldiers to states, right? To quell crime and riots and things of that nature.
So Washington, D.C. was the exception because it is a federal territory. They can go in there and do anything they want because it's just treated differently.
Yeah.
Now, other states and cities have protections where the federal government cannot just come in and do things, right? They have protections against federal overreach within states. So long that there are exceptions. There are things that the federal government can make moves on if, right, it gets too out of control beyond what the states can handle. And at this point, it's usually the relationship is you have a forest fire. Federal government can't just make decisions and handle a forest fire in California, right? The state has to say, wow, this is beyond our control. Let's invite the federal government in there, right? Mm-hmm. And then that's the way the relationship has always worked. Now, if it gets so out of control where you have maybe a corrupt force that says we like forest fires and we're going to burn it all down so we can sell our state off to Mexico and whatever, you'd be acting against the interests of the federal government. You've gone the other direction where you're doing something that's hurting the interests of the federal government, and they can exercise powers that then go put out the fire, even though you didn't want me to, because you were working in conflict with the best interests of the citizens there. And that's what we're talking about. Like when you go beyond the mark where you're truly, you're truly making the decision that the federal government, again, the interest of the populace there.
So they could always, no pun intended, but they can trump that decision eventually. If it gets so bad, and it's just a matter of who's deciding when it goes beyond the legal limits of doing that. So those who are against sending in any federal aid, help, soldiers, whatever, what is it they think they're doing when they get there? Like, what's the pushback? Is it you just don't like the idea of doing it, that it feels like he's flexing too much power? Or does it feel like they're arresting people who shouldn't be? Like, what is the pushback as to why someone doesn't want
I'm going to
there?
let the Julies decide why they're pushing so heavy against the National Guard or federal agents assisting. My guess is that because their predicate was that he's an authoritarian, and this is an opportunity to basically put an exclamation point on that charge.
Mhm.
Thank you, sir. And so they're taking advantage of the opportunity to say, see, that's what it is. And because if they held that view beginning, they have to follow it through to take advantage of that evidence, you know?
Yeah. Like I saw someone put on Facebook recently, they shared a picture. So again, who knows if it's real or not? It was Facebook. But it was of an old woman that was bleeding from the head.
Okay.
And that was it. It was just an old woman with a bloody head. And they posted it saying, see, this has got to stop. This is too much. These agents are everywhere. And it very much painted this picture as though everyday citizens, little old people, were getting beat up and hurt from having these people here. Is that what they think is happening? Is that happening? Like, is that the pushback? I just don't understand why.
So, but you'd have to carry that argument to one deeper level. Okay, so the argument is that if you send federal agents, it's going to make the protesters elevate their protests, right? And they're going to cause more violence. But the argument is hard to make because you'd have to say that I went to a protest and I was on the curb with my sign, and then I was attacked and I wasn't going beyond, I wasn't in violence. Versus the person that got blood on their head. Here's the video of what they did, and they punched an agent. Well, they didn't get the bloody head because they were protesting. They got a bloody head because they punched an officer. And you'd have, again, it's probably easier to draw the line back to what had the, because if you're in a traffic stop, you can escalate it by behaving a certain way, and you can de-escalate it by behaving an entirely different way. And then somebody has to prove through body cams which of those segments happened. And it's very likely that the person caused the bloody head by their behaviors, and they didn't go peacefully stand on a sidewalk holding a sign passively. Yeah,
I mean, we've all seen videos of places where there are men dressed in full body armor just standing there for crowd control, looking straight forward and not moving. And these protesters are screaming in their faces and pushing up against them. And it's like, so when you come back bloodied, whose fault was that?
Yeah, chicken and egg deal. So so let's just say all the protesters took a week off and just let ICE, do their thing, and there was nobody outside the gates blocking cars and throwing things at whatever. What would they be doing? Would they say, hey, there's nobody to beat up, I'm going to go out into the city, right, and beat some people up? I'm hungry for it. Or is the people who showed up causing all of this, and they carry the most weight? So let's just say down here there's a protest outside of the prison down the road, and it's getting kind of heated and whatever, and you just as a bystander decide, I'm going to go check it out, and you're not going to do anything, you just want to look, right? Mm-hmm. And let's just say you get hit with a brick. Now, did you get hit with a brick because of the prison or the protesters?
The protesters.
Okay, because without the protesters, there wouldn't have been a throwing brick. And then, you have the choice to not be there. And then what are the chances of you getting hit by a brick with you not going down there?
Pretty good.
Okay. Your chances increase when you go to the protest, even not doing anything, because you willingly took on a deal. So I
went down to a war zone.
Right. So if there are people misbehaving and I'm a person that's not misbehaving, I am freaking out of there because I'm not going to get lumped in with the people who are misbehaving. I might get hit with a brick and I'm out. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always heard, like, in different cities, whether it was here or down south where I used to live, if there was a big organized protest weekend coming up, a lot of people were like, oh, I'm not going over there. They're having a big protest.
That's exactly
weekend.
Right. Stay out of it. Let the people who want to misbehave. It's so much easier for law enforcement to pick them up, throw them in the van, and take them to federal prison when it's not peppered in with a bunch of people who are just looky-loos, just attracted to the drama of what's going on.
Yeah. Janet says it's overreach. how is it overreach? Do you believe that they are there unnecessarily, that there is not a problem?
But that's because you said so. Overreach would be, there's due process for overreach. Since we're in a due process deal, whenever somebody does overreach, they find it out and they stop it from happening. So if you think there's overreach, follow due process and put an end to it. If it's just I said it, and somehow I think I carry the authority of me being right and you being wrong, just because I say it doesn't mean shit. I've got to prove that that what I said has truth behind it.
Yeah.
But rhetoric means that you can say a thing almost like racist. You can say overreach. And since everybody has a sensitivity to government overreaching, all you and I want is say, okay, cool, this is overreach. Give me the overreach. What is the overreach? If it's your opinion, it's not really overreach.
Yeah, that's the thing, is tell me why you believe it's an overreach.
Right.
Jerry says the pushback is Trumpism. If someone came up to you and said they will put security at your street for free and not cost you more, why would anyone ever say no? Levies have been passed where it would cost you money for more police protection, but in this case, they are turning free protection away. It's a personal political stance. And I kind of agree with that because, I mean, look at like things people asked to do in school systems. I was just talking to a friend down south yesterday who was telling me their school looks like a prison now. They said you have to walk through metal detectors to get in. There's a plexiglass casing over the office window. You say who you are and why you're there. Everything is done with security. And there's a lot of people that want that say we should have police officers in our schools to protect our children.
You live in a neighborhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's just say there were 3 burglaries on your street. And would you, as a person that lived there, want there to be more burglaries, the same number of burglaries, or less?
Less.
All right. So let's just say the police said, hey, this area is getting hit. We're going to send 10 police officers, and they're just going to stand guard in the street on your neighborhood. When you look out there, are you saying, wow, thank God they're taking it serious and want to make sure burglaries don't happen? Or you're like, look at this overreach. How dare they?
I want them there. We live on a busy road, and I love it when there is a cop that sits right there and watches all the speeders. And I hate it when he's gone because I know people are going to change their behavior if they see law enforcement close by. That's why I don't get the pushback.
But it's honestly though, that if you, let's just say you have a mistrust in law enforcement, you've had bad run-ins with them, they've done ill to you at a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
Now you've got those same 10 officers on your street, and now you're suspicious that while they're there, they're going to start writing people tickets for breaking the law.
Yeah.
Right?
Are you looking for something?
So the suspicion that there's law enforcement who you don't trust, now you need to start looking and observing to make sure that they are actually doing the thing that is the reason why they are there.
Yeah.
And until if you said, hey, those 10 people were there and they gave away 10 citations for people breaking the rule, this is overreach. They're taking advantage of me letting them stay, which are not allowed to be on my street and set up shop there. I know for a short period of time they're there to stop the burglaries from happening, but they took advantage of it and they overreached by their true intention.
Maybe there's been no burglary now for a year and I got arrested walking down the street.
They shouldn't have been there anyway, and bad things happen but you got to state that claim. And then when you state that claim, you go to the police department and say they're overstaying their welcome here. Now they're going beyond it, that they're taking advantage of it. Get them out of here. You have to make that part of the argument.
Right.
It's not just okay to say it's possible that they go too far. You have to find evidence that they had gone too far.
Holly said something up top. If we go, Holly says, I have been to a protest as a photographer in college, a protest I had no skin in the game on. It was PETA. The cops literally slammed me into the wall as I was in the public sidewalk taking pictures, not in the way, not disobeying any order. The protesters were just holding signs on the sidewalk, no violence. I don't agree with PETA, but the police response was violent and not appropriate. Have any of you been to a protest?
Not a violent one. I've been to rallies but none of them violent. So I think the nature, PETA carries with it that, if I'm law enforcement and PETA shows up, they are notorious troublemakers, right? And they do certain things that whatever. So your name, like if I brought somebody that was in the mafia to a business agreement, they might not do anything mafia, but I brought the name with me, and you are going to protect yourself against it by association, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, I would not be covering, right, a PETA thing, knowing that I might get hit by that brick. Again, like, do I think cops should go too far? No. Follow due process. If someone behaved badly, take it to their supervisors and train them how to deal with people that are loud and, have signs that have things that you don't like seeing.
Yeah, Holly, just out of curiosity, just to wonder how they would handle it, did you by chance go to that department or anything and show them either your wounds or tell them what happened? And if so, how did they handle it? I'd be curious to hear. Dana says, like you said, chicken versus egg. Did the guard get deployed because of protesters, or did protesters show up because the guard was deployed?
I think a little of both. And that's what gets hard about it, because once they've committed those troops, it's going to attract the people who are really pissed off that says, now I'm going to stand up to you. So if you're a master strategist and if your sole purpose is to quell it, right, you behave a little differently. This is I'm going to basically criticize both sides for this. I don't think the protesters should be using the strategies that they are. They're asking for, law enforcement treating them better than just standing on the sidewalk. And I also think that now you're escalating it by playing right into that hand. But the other part of it, if it's a organic, natural protest, right, you don't have 10,000 people being bussed into a protest that don't really even know why they're there. Their only deal is they're being paid to cause trouble.
Yeah.
Right. So if I then, from a law enforcement standpoint, I wanted to dry up the paid protester, industry, I would do this so I could sniff them out, find out where the money's being spent, how they're organizing and whatever, and tamp that crap out.
Yeah, that's the thing is, the sad fact is that exists. Paid protesters, organizations that find a group of people and hire them to go cause a scene in the middle of a protest. If I were someone that was truly against something happening, I wanted to have an organized, peaceful protest, make signs, get our voices heard, I would be fighting against those assholes. Don't come in here with your agenda, trying to make money, trying to make us look bad, and putting us in danger when ultimately the law enforcement is going to have to amp up their control because you all are making this out of control. So is it the guards' problem? Is it the administration's fault? Or is it the fact that it is legal to pay people to go cause a scene and make problems during a protest? To me, that's the problem. It's like they're paid to sit there and be like, I'm not touching you.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I'll give you an experience here in Youngstown that we had. And this was secondhand. I didn't experience this personally. But during the BLM that was going on, they had a parade here. And at City Hall, they had, it wasn't a protest, but it was just a gathering. It was a rally of some sorts. And they walked around the streets and whatever. Well, a person that was out of state came in. They were organizing this rally. They had a backpack that had all the tools of war in it. They had chains and bricks and all kinds of things, right? And where you had maybe, and this was again an account that was told to me, I didn't experience this. There were maybe a group of 100 people who were chanting and walking and following the rules. And you had this one person out of town that was saying things to try to get the rest of the people madder than they naturally were. They were instigating something that was happening. Well, this person who told me this went up to that person, right, who had the bag, who had the chains, who had the bolt cutters and whatever, and talked them down and told them, get out of this deal.
Yeah.
So had he not done that, that whole group of 100 people, that if nothing happened, they would have walked, got it out of their system, and went home. With that person in there, windows got broken, traffic got stopped. So the chicken and egg thing is, without those plans, it probably would just be a nice, boring, make the news article that people came out and did something, no damage was done. So I'm going to give responsibility to those inciters. We got to find out who they are, how they're getting here, right? How they're being trained.
That is the perfect picture of social media and how social media works. the insiders. People would not probably be up in arms as they are on social media if they didn't have those.
Yeah, and so that investigation of who benefits from that damage, and the sanctuary cities are getting played against just as much as they're playing for. And I think they lose in this because I think reasonable people are like, hold on, okay, cool, you've had your little tantrum. Now we're talking about like real lives. I mean, how long before somebody loses their life because of this? And then it really gets serious. A couple bruises, somebody getting peppered with paintballs, somebody getting mad and whatever. That's where we're at right now. Somebody getting arrested or whatever. But when we start having loss of life or we have violence that goes beyond that, that's where the federal government's saying, we got to stop this before it gets to that point. Because all it's going to take is one bad actor put themselves in that crowd, really cause some damage that is not going to help either cause.
Yeah. Julie says state governors have to ask for federal intervention per law. The opposite is happening. Therefore, Trump is breaking the law.
Yeah, but the law is situational, right? There are situations that mean different laws apply. So under what are we going to call it? Non-wartime, right? Mm-hmm. You follow certain standards. So you have laws that are meant to hem in the federal government and what they're allowed to do. When it escalates and you have wartime, okay, it's just about arguing yourself. Is it wartime? Okay, so check boxes. Is this happening? Is this happening? Is this happening? And then saying, well, we don't have an invading army, right? But can we count fentanyl or gang members or terrorist groups? Could that be considered a warring nation? Because as soon as you deem them an organization that is an enemy and they are doing things on your soil, like throwing things, lighting stuff on fire, or whatever, now the rules shift onto more wartime footing against the people who are committing war within your own country. Even if it's your foreign and domestic is in those documents for a reason. And it doesn't have to be China that comes in and invades. It could be a domestic version of that, and the government can, respond accordingly.
There are some people I know that are concerned about declaring martial law.
Yes.
Do you think we are headed for that? Do you think that this is what they're working towards, or is that a reach?
You might have martial law declared short term in a very small segment. And the people who have accused Trump of being authoritarian are saying that martial law allows Trump to do a whole lot of things that he couldn't otherwise do. So I can see where that accusation would happen, but it would have to be extremely serious. And I'd have to have some evidence that we're heading in that direction. We're not making it any more likely by doing what we're doing. This is just something that's going to be easily quelled by the National Guard taking it serious for about 6 hours. We remember when Dick Cheney and Bush were going into Iraq, right? Mm-hmm. You remember when the bombings happened with Iran's nuclear facilities. Mm-hmm. These pinpointed, you overwhelm them with a response that extinguishes it. Versus, I throw a grenade at you, and then a week later you throw a grenade at me, and it's not enough to have a big response for. So we just do these little proportional responses, and then those wars last forever. But if, let's just say I said, okay, well, Illinois doesn't want us there, but Chicago's a war zone. We're going to take a 6-hour period. We're going to do overwhelming force. We're going to quell it, put up big barricades, and now it's done. And then we recuse ourselves, and then everything goes back to normal. That's more of a dose of martial law that I think we're going to get.
So the law that states he can't intervene unless the governors ask, that can actually be overlooked if the president deems it a dangerous enough situation.
Well, no, not just the president. You have to have the legislature also be. This is a full body deal. It's going to go through all the prisms of the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive. They can't declare it on their own. And I think there are things that the executive branch can do short term, right? Mm-hmm. And if there's a state of, almost like if you have a recess appointments are reserved, that if something happens and the executive needs to respond and Congress is out of session, they can make a short-term appointment that gets them by until Congress can come back and make the legitimate appointment. So you get into these new territories where you can see the foundation. if the government shut down and the legislature's not even meeting, you can see why all of these people are concerned, because now the president can take liberties because he's like, all right, I got to go to Congress, but they're closed, right? So now I can do some stuff that I couldn't otherwise do until they come back into session. You see what I mean?
Yeah. Chicken says, I can honestly say I would not like armed guards in my neighborhood. If my neighborhood warranted armed guards, I would leave because that's not the environment I want to be in.
But there is a situation that you wouldn't mind it. And that's why if you escalate it and say, okay, let's just say there's an active shooter in your neighborhood, would you want armed guards in your neighborhood? You would say, absolutely. That's a proportional response to what we're experiencing. Now, if it's car burglaries, you don't want people coming with M16s, right? Or heavy weaponry for a burglary. That seems out of proportion for what you're trying to quell. Police presence, absolutely. Camera setup, absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's just these two mindsets of, oh, I'm going to leave because I don't like that these armed guards are here. Whereas I would leave because, holy shit, it's so bad that armed guards are here. Like that means there's so much crime, I better leave.
Yeah. And especially even if it's like an optics thing where if there were bad elements of gangs in your neighborhood and police were having trouble to get rid of them, and they roll tanks down in your street to show how serious they are about ending the gang violence. Well, both the citizens are going to feel uneasy about that, but also the gangs are going to feel obviously uneasy about that. And if they need the optics, the pressures of the strength of the government to quell that psychologically, that's a strategy.
Yeah, I mean, Julie says, again, why only blue cities? Well, an honest question. I'm not trying to insinuate anything. Is it the blue cities that have all the violence? Or are they going into only blue cities, even ones that are not violent?
So the argument from Gavin Newsom and Pritzker was that Texas, who were not sending National Guard troop in, have high crime rates, right? So why aren't we like, okay, so think about urban dense population centers. You have your problem that is concentrated in a specific area that's doing a specific thing. So if I have a weapon that goes against quelling, groups of 1,000 people versus Texas, where they have a high crime rate, but it's spread out over the course of huge counties and huge areas. So the weapon that you would use to quell violence in large swaths of things isn't to take an army of National Guard people and quell that violence. It's handled a little bit differently. So there's some parallels there, but I wouldn't use the same kind of response for dense urban populations versus spread out counties.
So when people say, "Oh, it's only blue," it's not a red versus blue thing. It makes sense because of the urban. It's still
a reasonable question. Are blue cities being targeted only? And if you had a red city that, I don't think red cities like that even exist, but it's still a fair argument to say, let's make sure that this isn't political persecution and we're only doing this in blue cities.
Which is why my question is, if there are no red cities, are there red cities that are as dense urban layout like the ones that happen to be blue that have the guard in them? And if the answer is, well, no, the red's kind of just a different.
Well, just take a snapshot. Take the area that if the guard went there, what would they do? They would go to the areas that have these groupings of people that were antagonizing ICE officers. Cool. Take that picture, what that looks like, and let someone say, yeah, that's too dangerous for just regular uniformed police officers to handle. They need some help. And go to the area that you'd want to send National Guard troops in, like in Austin, Texas. I'm not saying a problem's happened here, but using as an example. Take that picture. Okay, there's an ICE facility. There's nobody there. There may be two people that are protesting. Law enforcement can handle that. The current law enforcement can handle what's there. You might have, in this area of town, you had a carjacking and you had a stabbing over here. Well, sending a mass group of law enforcement for an area that uniformed police can absolutely handle, not a good response. So, but you can make that case, not just a blue state. It seems rhetorical.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people, Janet too, Trump is targeting Democratic cities. And again, is he, or do they just happen to be the cities that need the help? I don't know. Something to look at. Carrie says, maybe you are too young to remember Kent State shooting. National Guard killed students unarmed across a field. Multiple deaths. We're one bullet away from that. Are you okay with citizens killing citizens that are protected under our Constitution?
Well, they are not protected under the Constitution. Once you break off the sidewalk, stop listening to the commands of law enforcement, doing violence to law enforcement, throwing things at law enforcement, they're no longer in protected deal. And law enforcement should immediately take you out of the equation and put you somewhere. Like I would, if I was a judge there, I would make sure that any of these people that were cool with breaking the law and going after ICE officers, you wouldn't have a time sentencing. You would be in prison until the riots are done. Because I do not want you joining back with that crowd after you've already been taken off the street. Taking you off the street means that you are no longer allowed to be in group settings like that, because you're just going to cause problems a second time. And that's the downside of local law enforcement, is that a blue city will have these riots. A police officer will arrest that person. They'll get sent to a judge that will then give them cash bail, release them, and they'll go right back into that crowd. Yeah. A federal officer will arrest them, and they will go to a federal judge in a federal prison that is not captured by politics and not just super eager to let these people go back on the street. They'll hold and contain them a little bit longer. So even if we had to do an end around the local police just to get to the federal level, that's a strategy in its own self.
Yeah, I mean, if you drove recklessly, you lose your ability to drive. If you were protesting and being violent and causing problems, should you be allowed to do that anymore?
That's right. And if you have local politics and local police and local judges captured by an ideology, then those people just get released and right back. You're not any better off. The process of just arresting someone who's just going to be out in 6 hours did nothing at all.
Yeah, I mean, if we are asked to consider the fact that Trump is just targeting Democratic cities and pushing his own agenda, then would it not be fair to say that it is possible that those cities are allowing violence? They want it to get so bad.
That's the point.
That these people have to come in and they can say, "Oh, look at the overreach. Oh, look at what he's trying to do."
But it is their only angle, and that's why they have to take it. And when regular people say, like, "Why are these cities? Why are they defending violence?" Right?
Yeah,
that's a hard argument to make with an uncaptured person.
Yeah. Definitely.
Carter says, how about the unprovoked killings on citizens by street gang? Every weekend in Chicago, dozens of innocent people are shot and many killed. That's okay. And I think the tolerance and what police departments, I mean, that I was just reading a ton of legal strategies and cases that you and I would agree that person did something that was so heinous that they should be on bars. And I can't believe that they're no longer in bars. So if your legal system's broken to the point where it's not serving the purpose of keeping you and I safe from people who like to commit crimes, right?
Yeah.
I have a mistrust with whatever caused that. I don't know what caused it, but I don't trust
as soon as I hear the defense of, oh, yes, they killed someone, but they're a victim of the establishment.
Exactly.
And all these rules were stacked against them.
Dangerous game to play.
Ugh.
Let's see. I will be at a No Kings rally on the 18th. Of course, it's organized. I'm not being paid. I know why we'll be there. Should I have my gas mask and helmet? No, if it stays peaceful. They had No Kings rallies all over the place. Do you notice what didn't happen?
Violence.
Right? No violence happened because they oriented themselves correctly. I think liberals, though, they ramp these things up. So No Kings will get violent. When you had this group of people that showed up and they didn't cause any damage, the people that really want damage to happen will figure out a way to infiltrate and make those just as violent as whatever. So keep your eye on that, Julie. I don't want anything bad to happen to you. So when you get a sense that the wrong people start joining that crowd and they start pushing on violence, get yourself out of there, because I don't want you to get...
Yeah, Julie, let us know when you go. If you see any people that show up that you're like, why are you even here? Why are you causing problems? We're just trying to walk with our signs, and see if are there a group of people that show up that are trying to amp up the temperature.
Sure, because there's a sensitivity to it on both sides. So law enforcement, if you dealt with violence and you've read the stories in the other cities and you start seeing that profile start to happen right in front of you, right? They got a hard job to do anyway. and to have a bunch of people that could go into chaos at any second. That tinderbox lights up.
So Julie, who are you afraid of most? Law enforcement or those people?
The insiders, yeah.
Because I would go and be like, I'm not going to need my gas mask and helmet because law enforcement is going to randomly come over and pummel me. But are there going to be a group of people that want to amp it up and incite violence and cause problems and make law enforcement on edge? I would bank on that being more likely.
For
so
sure.
Maybe bring it just in case.
2 MAGA influencers were dressed in black, acting as Antifa, and were unmasked and identified in Portland. Yeah, I saw a bunch of that happen. There were there was a social media influencer, part of the media, strong MAGA, and he was at the protest covering it, talking to people, and he was actually arrested, detained, right, as that conservative. They didn't end up pressing charges, but he's making it a huge deal. Now what they're doing is there's MAGA infiltrators that are setting up encampments the same way that Antifa is. And what they're trying to prove is that they are going to be shut down and arrested, and the encampment that's the Antifa ones are going to be undisturbed and be treated differently. So they're creating this is the protest of a protest within the same protest.
So they're going to say they were shut down because they're MAGA and Antifa was not.
Yeah. So let's just say there was a homeless guy that had a tent set up out here, and you watch the police just walk by them and just let them happen. Mm-hmm. So you're like, I don't think that's right. If I set a tent up on this street, they'd tell me to take it down and be arrested. So you bring out your Coleman, you go out on the sidewalk, and a couple blocks down from that guy, you set up your tent. Cops pulls by and says, you're not allowed to camp here, right?
Yeah.
So you set the trap of being treated differently than the homeless guy down, and now you have a story to tell about how the police treat people differently depending on who they are. So the plan of those MAGAs is to create that. It's a dangerous game to play when you're in the middle of a very, very dangerous type of protest to pull that kind of a political stunt.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it, but I see what they're doing.
Interesting. Julie asks, are we at war within the U.S.?
100% we are. 100%.
Who versus who?
Antifa, for one. Okay, so if you take people who follow the law is in the American side, right? Mm-hmm. People who are pushing on the status quo of laws and break laws, those are your lawbreakers, those are your anarchists, those are who we're terrorists. Yes, lawlessness is who we're at war with. So if I'm a drug dealer, right?
Yeah.
And I want to figure out whether I'm not on the they're at war with me side or not, I'm going to say, okay, are they at war with me, or they do war with the actions that I'm currently participating in? Oh, they don't want me selling drugs. Drugs are illegal. So yes, man, they're going to come down on me because I am breaking the law. So if I'm stopping traffic by sitting in the streets, and I can figure out whether or not I'm the one that needs to be protected or I'm the one they're at war with, you're not following the rules and laws, and you are who we're at war with.
So law-abiding citizens versus criminals.
100%.
That's our war.
Yeah. Yep.
Daniel says, Janet, he's targeting Democratic cities because those are the crime-ridden, uncontrolled areas where the Democratic leadership has failed.
Yeah, if you take a look at list of all of the sanctuary cities, they are all blue cities. There's not a Republican state that will tolerate a city within that is a sanctuary state. Maybe Texas, I can see them pulling that
Janet
shit down
says,
there.
Daniel, not true. Louisiana has horrible crime, and he isn't going there.
If we're using crime rates and statistics versus the actions of rioters and we're talking about two different things here.
Yeah. So we're looking at like a high crime rate area in general,
in a small area,
versus immediate violent outbursts, basically, and we're going to those.
Yeah, we're still at war with the crime that has high statistics, but what you do in response to those statistics will be different. If I wanted to clean up Louisiana and not all my criminals were gathered in one pack together, well, I'm not going to send in big masses of people to get those people. I'm going to increase and target the things that I'm going after.
So like if Harlem New York is known as a high crime area.
Yes.
And I don't know, Chicago maybe somewhat, but Chicago is like on fire, rioters, protesters, violent outbursts. People could say, well, why'd you go there and not go to Harlem? Harlem's high crime. You're like, but not what we're here to do.
Right.
We're after a very specific
Yeah, and that's
thing.
like triage. Like when there's a plane crash, right? They go out in the field and they find different levels of injury. They can't take care of everybody. There's just too many of them. So they take care of the ones that are dead and dying, or not dead, but dying and need immediate care. And then if you just got like a scratch, you're going to be touched absolutely last. So when you create the hierarchy of this, you're going to say, okay, if I can take care of 1,000 criminals and I can do it in 10 hours, I'm going to take care of that one first because it's going to destroy the cities and destroy businesses, destroy communities, and injure and kill people. Versus when it's spread out over, 100 miles, like maybe instead of sending troops there, I lend in National Guard organization, like command centers, or giving them holding, because if they're not able to get to all the criminals just because they're understaffed, we're going to lend staffing to you rather than hit the brunt of it and then hand it back to you. So two different things we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Daniel says, not every single one, but the majority of the most crime-filled areas are Dem. LA, New York, Chicago.
It's just scale. They're big cities. They have population densities, and they just happen to be blue when you have large population densities. It's a correlation is all it is.
Yeah. Like my thing would be like for a second, consider, does something actually make sense? Like we all want to jump to this super quick emotional appeal of someone's just trying to stick it to someone else. And I'm not saying that's never the case. I'm sure that happens. But could there also be a logical explanation as to why? It's a Democratic city. Oh, Trump wants to just hurt the Dems. Or it's a Democratic city. It's also very large. It's also very dense. It's a perfect location for an outburst of a violent act. Like, it just makes sense regardless of
I
what
know
color
when I'm
it is.
talking to someone logical, and very little of the defenses of like everything that's happening in these liberal cities with the mayors, with the governors, there's no logic to it. And so it's just performative. It's just part of politics. And, it'll wash out eventually when logic really takes foot again. Julie says the mayor of Portland claims anarchy is limited to one block of Portland. This is war. The NG is not in the worst parts of Chicago. Baton Rouge is a 50% higher crime rate than Chicago. Why not there? Hint Mike Johnson state. If tomorrow they said this worked out really well, we're helping these states by helping them clean up crime. We're going to get rid of the the riots and the protests first, but then since we got this modeled out, we're heading to Baton Rouge. I would totally say good idea.
Yeah. And again, what is it they think they're doing? If they're only going there because it's the state of someone Trump doesn't like.
It's not a punishment. It makes the state better.
What does going there accomplish that helps them and hurts the state?
Complete that circuit and find out going there and enforcing the law somehow hurts the blue cities that are.
What's Trump's motivation? I'm going to send law enforcement.
Because this feels like the
crime.
only response is going to be a conspiracy theory of some kind that hasn't happened.
Because they're going to say he's taking away these people's freedom of speech. He doesn't like what they're saying.
And that's cool if that's what you say.
Okay.
And then I would say, okay, well, show me some evidence of someone who wasn't violent, that their freedom of speech was taken away.
Yeah.
And then it's going to go slippery slope. We're like, well, no, this is just the start. And then they're going to be in every neighborhood silencing everybody. I'm like, going a little too far.
Yeah. I mean, there's places in Europe that you will literally be arrested for what you put on social media because you're not allowed to. You can't say that. And if that happened here, I'd be like, holy crap. They're silencing people because they don't want them to say things again. But like, you're going into a violent area. And when I say violent, I mean by everyone's terms. Julie would say it's violent, high crime, a lot of things going on. So what do you think is his motivation if he's only going into the states of people he doesn't like?
Yeah. Got to complete that circuit because I'm not following that. And speaking of, I don't know if it's the mayor of Chicago or Portland, announced that they're going to have a ice-free zone, right? So they're going to set up a segment where the city and all of its, administrators and all of its law enforcement are not going to aid ICE, and they're going to keep ICE out of there, and they're going to protect the citizens of ICE. And I thought that was amazing because I like this model, right? So in the city of Youngstown, I'm going to put up a barrier, and we're going to be an IRS-free zone, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody who's in my area, I know the federal government wants you to pay taxes, but this is an IRS-free zone. So if you come in here, we're going to protect you from the IRS. You're not going to have to pay taxes. We're going to show them. How quickly, right, would the federal government say, oh, wait a minute, if too many people do that and they stop paying their taxes, that's bad shape. You've got to follow federal law, and you're abetting criminals by enabling them to break federal law. You're ended. But so how emboldened that mayor is to say, I'm going to disregard federal law for the political side of this debate.
And then people will say, no, but Trump wants to ignore the law and do whatever he wants. And isn't that the same thing? What I would think would be an even better experience or experiment is let them and see how it works out. All right. You don't want our help? Bye. Call me when you're burned to the ground. Call me when you don't pay taxes and you get nothing done.
Still have to, and that's the reason, the origin of all of this is these sanctuary cities were breaking the law light while just being not necessary, being gentle and being accommodating with lawbreakers. And it was affecting people who didn't have a vote in that decision. Remember, the job of the government is to represent the people against the government. So if the government does something silly and stupid, like they pour mercury in your water, right? If I had a lake and I was like, this is a mercury zone, and they wanted to feed it to their citizens, fine. But the minute that it leaches into the water of the neighboring county that can't vote you in and can't do anything about it, now you're ill-affecting people that aren't involved. So if you like illegal immigrants and you bring them in, cool. They commit crimes, they destroy in your city, you deal with it. But taxpayers have to send those cities money because they can't handle the costs of the law enforcement. They can't, the healthcare costs, the cost of housing. And now it's starting affecting people outside of that constituency and that voting block. And that's when the federal government says, hey, you're going beyond what you're capable of doing. So let's just say Chicago says, all right, here's the deal. We're going to do it. We don't need the federal government's help. So the federal government says, we're not sending you any money. They build a nice big wall around Chicago so that all the problems stay contained within there. And now we disconnect completely from Chicago. What they do in their city is not any of our business. We're not giving them any help. They're not hurting us in any other way. Now they become their own country, and we've given them sovereignty as a state outside of the United States. That's the way that this works. California has flirted with this a dozen times. Texas has flirted with this a dozen times. It's a bad idea in its inception because once you lose the support of the federal government, you think it's like the sugar daddy syndrome. Right? You don't know all the things you had. And the minute that things you weren't paying for before, somebody else was responsible for, now it becomes all your responsibility. You're like, oh, wait, hold on. We were benefiting from being part of this great state of the United States.
Do you feel like you could almost relate this to locally what's happening with the mall? Like, I've caught only bits and pieces of this. Apparently, the person who owns the Southern Park Mall is not paying taxes, and now different representatives and boardmen are saying, well, that's income we now don't have. So we're going to lose staff, and we're going to have to cut programs, and we're going to cut the upkeep of certain things that the general public has gotten used to. And when you see that you no longer have these things that you've always had, you could say, well, what do you expect us to do? We don't have that revenue anymore. That's why I say, go ahead and do it your way, and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. And it's going to be messy.
Yeah.
It's going to be messy. Look up the most dangerous cities in the U.S., majority red states. Again, that's still on the statistics thing. And the second leg of this war will probably lending the crime enforcement on a federal level to be invite those cities to have do those cleanups there, and I hope they keep doing it.
Yeah.
I hope they take the side of law-abiding citizens and stop fighting so hard to keep lawlessness normalized.
I would even listen to that if you found statistics that said red states have the most protests. Then I'd say, oh, maybe there's something to this then. Are we only targeting blue? But if we're not talking about general crime, they're there to quell the violent outbursts.
That's the difference.
Yes.
Go have a protest that follows protocol, like due process. If you're a protest and a violent protest, an immigrant and an illegal immigrant, when you mash those two things together, you get pretty scared. But when you're saying, hey, this is about law, not about status, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're breaking the law, then law enforcement does their thing and you get separated from the people who are following the law. That is how the system is supposed to work.
Yeah. Chicken says, I also lived in a blue city in North Carolina and a blue city in Tennessee.
All right. Julie, you are answering the question and saying it's only blue cities, but why would red cities not get the free help if red party is in control? To the victor goes the spoil. So if it were reversed, and let's just say that they were like, let's go help our red cities out. Now the Democrats would be like, they're giving preference to the Republicans for offering free law enforcement. What about us?
Let's go ahead and quell all the crime in the red states and let the blue states burn themselves to the ground.
You can see it and hear exactly that's what they would say, for sure.
Yes. That's a good point.
Your thoughts on Stephen Miller? He's a bulldog, and he's part of an administration that, punches hard and doesn't hold back, doesn't say popular things, doesn't bring you into the fray. He's a fighter and going to continue on, and he's going to create more fighters on the other side. So I hope the Republicans are, I don't think they'll do it as well because the dude is wicked smart. The guy is really good at what he does. Wicked smart. And so, the Democrats are going to make another. And so I hope the Republicans are ready to face down someone who is not as, not as honorable as what you expect from a politician. So
Daniel says, Charlie Kirk killed, mass gatherings to mourn, no violence.
Yeah. We have had 2 No Kings rallies where I am, and both were super successful and peaceful. They chose a great spot to not block traffic and were respectful of the community, cleaned up their mess too. It's beautiful.
Good. Yeah.
Beautiful thing. So that's the whole part. Again, tell your friends that we are just against the violence and crime, not the expression and the protest.
Yeah. Chicken says, I agree. It's only a correlation. It's not blue versus red. It's criminals versus law abiding.
Yeah. And remember, all of this is in response to ICE and kicking people out of the country. And so if the ICE goes to a place that is a sanctuary city, it means it has a lot of people who need kicked out of the country. So ICE is not going to go to Louisiana, where Louisiana doesn't protect the criminals. So you just got to play this out logically to know why they picked those areas.
Yeah.
The one you're floating doesn't make sense.
Not everything is just a power play to push their agenda. Some, sure.
Yeah.
But not everything is.
Right.
Daniel says, correlation. I can sit here and list red, large populated cities that aren't crime filled and allowed lawlessness.
Yes. Remember the components. It's the lawlessness. It's not the crime. The crime is going to happen everywhere you have people. And if you have industry and you have manufacturing, anywhere, that it can happen, you're going to statistically have some of it regardless.
So can you have an area with high crime and they're doing everything they can to quell it versus an area with high crime and they're letting it happen?
Exactly. And if you, let's just say Texas said, what guesses do you want to take as to what fuels the crime in Texas?
What fuels crime in Texas?
Yes.
I don't know. What fuels crime in Texas?
Well, close proximity to the border of a Mexico that is sanctuary to drug lords and crime. So if you're close to it, it leaks into your state. So if I wanted to quell Texas, if I wanted to National Guard Texas, what would I do? I would secure the border and let them mop up the decades worth of border leaks.
Yeah.
And then maybe you see, we send the National Guard and arrest people in Portland, brings crime down X. We close off the border in Texas and you reduce crime by X. And you're like, oh, two different strategies, had the same deal. People serious about reducing crime in cities, but we took two different scalpels, two different weapons to both one of those theaters.
But then what the opposing side can do is say, this has nothing to do with crime. You just hate people and you don't want anyone to seek asylum.
That's fine. But
then you're like,
no, we're dealing with logic here, and the emotional stuff.
Yep, that would be an example of someone not showing up to the debate and handle it logically.
Yeah.
It's
give me more.
Can't
is all
win,
I ask.
So I'm going to just derail and deflect and make it emotion and throw out ridiculousness.
Yep, that's exactly what it is.
Carol says Trump sent guard to Memphis.
Yeah, it will again. What is the National Guard? What are they used for? Like, if you got to be able to find the utility in everything that you have. What is the National Guard? It's their sole response. What's their mission statement?
I don't know the mission statement. National Guard is what? Sort of helping to keep peace here and like our backup plan.
Oh, peace here. Peace
Yeah.
here. So you have the military that basically goes out into the theater and protects us
They
externally.
go out to
National Guard is the same concept. Why would you need a National Guard if you have police and you have state police, you have local police? Why would you need a National Guard? What are you saving the duties of the National Guard up for if a riot's happening within the state and you're looking through the arsenal of things that you have that is built and purposed for quelling that? Why would you not use that? Why are we using National Guards of other states and not just sending state National Guards to defend their own state? That's kind of a little bit different because you have state. So basically you have the National Guard that have sort of like barracks. I'm going to call them barracks, but they're probably called something better than that are spread out to give you coverage within the states. And are they federally? Is the National Guard federally controlled, or is it state controlled? And do states have their own version of the National Guard? I don't know that answer. Do you know that answer? When you say the National Guard, is it a federal institution?
I guess I always assumed it was federal, but I guess I can't say I know.
Okay, I don't either.
Somebody tell us, is there a state National Guard or is it all federal?
I'm almost certain that National Guard within the states are controlled by the governors of those states. Anyway, that's going to be my research project for later today, understanding how the National Guard even freaking works.
Yeah.
By my understanding, that if internal conflicts are happening and you need military-like law enforcement to let the local law enforcement catch up, that's what they're used for. And this is the perfect use for that. And more in like Memphis, giving police expansions and more resources and more equipment to handle their own stuff. You'd have to make the argument that they're just not situated to handle the level of crime before you bring in the bigger guns. So
I keep thinking back to, and I will state, this is me thinking out loud. So this may or may not make sense.
Okay.
Because I'm saying it before I think about it.
Okay.
Down south, I was living in a military town. And in that town, you had law enforcement, police officers with the city. And then you also had military police, MPs. The military police were walking around. We had this area that was known as, like, some people called it downtown, some people called it uptown. Who knows what it was, but it was a area of bars, restaurants, music venues, whatever, where a bunch of people go out and they drink and they have fun. And you saw police officers, but you saw MPs walking around that dealt with soldiers that may or may not be causing problems or involved in anything. Could you not say, here's an example that we see on a regular basis of an enforcement organization there for a specific cause, even though we have other law enforcement?
Well, there's sort of like law enforcement science behind the scenes that deal with like just statistical phenomenon that's guaranteed. So if you go to a wedding right? Are you required to have a police officer hired to be at a wedding?
If there's alcohol,
yes, you have a collection of people and you add alcohol and you have this formula that said you've increased your risk, something happening. So now enough of them, and it probably happened, enough weddings happened without one, right? They said, we should have one here. And then that is meant to manage and keep it safer because of just the ratio of police officers to groups of people. Yeah. And then you like have a university, right? You have a collection of people, right? And they can either use city resources to have the city, and the city saying, well, you can manage yourself. You have enough people that you should have your own police force to manage your internal affairs. And then you just come to us if something goes beyond the requirements of having a local contained police force. So you have YSU security, Youngstown State University security versus Youngstown Police Department. They work together because they're kind of doing the same thing, but because you have a liability, a footprint of probability that something goes down, you create a force that manages your own affairs before it dumps off to the one that's outside of your ring. We do that all the time.
Yeah. So like everything we're fighting about, I mean people in this country, this is not unheard of. No. These are not new concepts. No. And it's only now that it's a fight between Republican, Democrat. What Trump wants to do versus what other people want to do. Why is it now this has become that?
It flipped on its head. So let's just say YSU, we'll use them as the example. YSU would be managing their own stuff, but they would look up to their backing from the Youngstown police force, and they would be like, both of us want there to be no crime. We don't want any kind of violence. We don't want things to go bad. We'll try to handle it. We know our limitations on what we can handle. But it flipped, and it's almost like YSU, we're like, we want some crime to be able to happen. I don't want the outside forces messing with it. We want some drug stuff to happen. We want some, violence to happen. So we'll try to keep the police force from coming in. And it's backwards in the way that's if you are a law enforcement, I should know that you're playing on a certain team and have a certain rule book. You want some things not to happen and you want other things not to happen. When it becomes reversed, we're like, why do we want judges to help people break laws? Like that's opposite of what I think a judge should be. And like a law enforcement agent.
Yeah.
It's upside down.
Not to pick on Julie, but I'm still waiting on that answer as to why going in with the guard or I guess the guard is overreach, and what motivation does Trump have to do that? Wouldn't Trump, if he were truly like, I don't like this, they're Democratic cities, I don't like their governor, wouldn't he then not send any help? Wouldn't he say, I hope you all destroy yourselves? And then I could say, look at this governor who did a terrible job. Look at his crime-ridden. We do that with Tim Walz. People want to say, oh, look, Tim Walz must be a terrible leader and he's terrible at what he does. And look at all the crime and look at all the unrest. Wouldn't that be more of an angle for Trump to take than, I don't like you, let me go help clean up your streets and solve your crime area?
So we can do an experiment here, right? Mm-hmm. Trump can say, all right, here's what I'm going to do. It's going to be the greatest thing we've ever done.
It's really smart. All right. I'm so proud that I thought of it.
We're going to go down to Texas, and there's an ICE detention facility there. And we're going to send the National Guard. They haven't invited us. There's no riots. There's nobody outside. Nobody. What?
It's the worst Trump impression.
It doesn't matter. Go with it. Add your own creativity on top of my own. But anyway, they send them there, right? To show then that sending the National Guard troops are not seeds for protests. So you can prove that fact, that the Guard does not create the protests. And secondly, that when there is a federal building or agents that need protected, that we're willing to send National Guard troops to a red state as well. It's a 2-for-1 special. Mm-hmm. And then you could be like, all right, it's evidence.
All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take it, we're going to send them everywhere, all over the population. It's a big population. It's quite a great population, I might add, since I've been here.
It's unbelievable. Nobody's ever done it before.
Yeah, not since that terrible administration was in office, because they're gone. They did
Biden
things
wouldn't
bad,
have done.
very,
He
very
wouldn't
bad.
have done this.
He wouldn't have done this. He would have just let lawlessness and people just running the streets just with no law all the time. And now I've forgotten what we were even talking about because of that terrible administration.
Acetaminophen, amino acids, and amino milkshakes. Chicken says, I think we can all agree that law enforcement don't want to be shot as much as we do. And also we are good down here. Our government isn't a moron.
Our governor
the moronic behavior is what most of us reasonable people disagree with most, because it does not follow any kind of it's all political. There's no logic behind it. Really.
Yeah. If you're fighting with no logic, you lose.
Big time.
You lose all
big
day
lose.
long. You're such a big loser, and I'm the winner.
What else?
We do terrible impressions.
No, we're allowed to, though. We have the mics.
What else?
I think the MLO bros just got booted off Facebook again.
Really?
Yeah. I think they did.
Why does that keep happening to them? They're so controversial. I gotta admit, I don't know why. I do know why. I don't know why it's such a big deal. Like, I don't know why I try to watch here and there, and I will admit, I don't see all of every show. Maybe there is some context I have missed. I will admit that. But what I do see, I don't know why people get so mad at them. Unless you're the person they're talking about, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Why else would people get so mad at them? All right. And if you're disgusted by bathroom humor, I could see that too.
But somebody out there loves bathroom humor.
I know. There's a whole bunch of seventh graders.
There's a lot of lessons in this. And I was in church one time, and I was pissed off because not pissed off, but irritated that I sat there the whole time and I got like no good pearls of wisdom. Like this service wasn't even for me.
Yeah.
And like I was just sitting there going through it. They're talking about things that I could take no value in, right?
Don't relate to it.
And then at the very end, he said, the pastor at the time said, I want you to know it's very important that not every party is for you. There is sometimes that somebody is getting exactly the message that they've been waiting their whole life for. And if you're sitting in here and it was like talking to me directly.
You're like,
this
part's for me.
Those people could use some help. And now you're aware that those people exist and they're hungry for this and they can use your appreciation. And I was like, holy shit. Like, not only now I'm not annoyed, I'm ashamed that I wanted to be catered to, and the person telling me just what I wanted to hear. And, that says more about me than them. And now I feel bad. And I'm like, I left just rocked mentally.
You did. God shamed you.
He did. Yeah. And so when, we talk a lot about hearing things that are in conflict of what you want to be served. Everybody wants to be VIP and catered directly to, but knowing that there are people in this world that are dumber than you, and I'm talking about the MLO bros. So I have to add the contrast between what they talk about and what we talk about. Sorry, Luke. That came off a little harsher than I expected.
I was like, did you just call them dumb?
There are people that have different interests than you. They have different priorities that you do. And so when somebody is giving energy to something that you really don't care about, they don't owe you telling you what you want to hear. In fact, there's been more value by saying unpopular things that you didn't like as a conditioning to get used to hearing unpopular things and being able to manage and regulate yourself in accordance that now you're pissed off. Cool. How should you discipline yourself so that you express yourself where you don't now get in trouble and then blame me for making you irate? Because they don't owe you peace, right?
Yeah.
That conflict might be exactly what you freaking need. And that's why I blame liberals for ramping things up, because here's the deal. They think what they're feeling inside is very profound. And they don't like you because you don't see the value and profoundness in what they're saying. And now they're angry because you don't believe what they believe. So if they told you calmly and you didn't listen and you were now not under their control, then they would say it louder. Then they would megaphone you. Then they would have to keep ramping it up because they don't understand why you don't get it. They've just explained it to you. How dare you not believe them and not go along with it? So liberals like to control the actions of other people. When they don't control them, they ramp up their strategy until they finally get control of your decision making because they don't like that you're disagreeing with them. And that's what I like about the MLO bros is they don't give two shits whether or not you disagree with them. In fact, the more you disagree with them, the better the conversations are on the other side of it.
Yeah, I wish people would even realize anything that creates controversy or a negative reaction has infinite more power than something that does not.
Right.
Like, that's our world. That's the internet. That's social media. That's podcasts. That's discussions. That's anything. That's marketing. Go take a marketing social media seminar and tell me rule number 1 is make everything a negative headline. Mm-hmm. It's not 5 healthy things you can do every day to live a long, happy life. It's 7 things that could kill you instantly. Watch out for these. Which one are you going to click on? It's daily. It's ingrained in our everyday lives. And then it's so interesting when people are like, oh, I hate those guys so much and they're this and they're that. I bet you watch them more than people who agree with them. Mm-hmm. That's just how we're wired. And this day and age we are in is just all over it and just serving it up constantly.
Well, in the messaging, because that's the actual formulation. All right, you nailed it. And this is profound. So I'm going to look at all you idiots that don't realize how profound Kelin was being. The cost and I'm going to not use consequence. I'm just going to use cost. Okay. Mm-hmm. When you do something, when you make an act outside your own mind, right? Everything has a cost. And either you're going to be willing to pay the cost and make bounty on that cost, or you're going to feel a victim of that cost. All right. So if you buy a car and you have to put gas in it, you're either going to say, oh, that's a cost of owning a car. I got to put gas in it. If you go to a protest that's violent, you get hit with a brick. That was the cost of going to a violent protest. If you say something that's controversial on Facebook and you get kicked off, that is a cost of being controversial on Facebook. You can either then saying, okay, well, I don't want to pay the cost, so I'm not going to do the thing. And then you have peace in the fact that you don't have to pay that consequence. The only victims is when you follow the rules and you get caught up in the consequence that somebody else created. That's an unfairness. That's the anarchy that we're all suffering right now. You're paying consequences right now for something you didn't do, and that's not fair to you. But the liberals want to pull the consequences of other people, make them the victim, and roll their consequences into you without giving you a say in whether or not you pay that consequence.
Yeah. And then you sort of get this mindset where you become numb. Like, there was a time probably where if someone on the internet called me a racist, I'd be like, what? No, I'm not. You're ridiculous. You didn't even listen to what I said. You took what I said completely out of context. I'm not a racist. I've never been. I blah, blah, blah. And now it's just like, that's it. Like, that's my reaction is, I'm not even going to address that comment. I'm not going to fight with you. You're clearly nuts. And if you didn't get called a racist, you're not even on the internet. Like, can you even say you're a podcaster if you weren't called a name? No. And now we've become numb to it. And on one hand, I want to say that's a good thing. I kind of like this new culture we're in, that we are not allowing those that want to amp up a situation with those harsh terms and names to get what they want. They've cried wolf too many times. You lost that power now. It's done. We've taken our power back to a certain extent with that. However, I also think that as we become more and more numb, I just saw someone the other day, he was saying, we're now dehumanizing each other. We're now not relating to each other. This guy I saw on a podcast gave an example of he was driving in his car the one day and he accidentally cut somebody off. He's like, I totally did it. I didn't mean to. I didn't see them, but I did. This driver honked their horn, flipped me the bird, yelled something. Well, we both then turned into the same gas station at the same time and went inside together. Mm-hmm. And he said, I went up to him and I said, hey man, I totally cut you off back there and I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to. That was a total accident. I apologize. And the guy goes, oh, I really appreciate that, man. No worries. Yeah, are you good? I'm good. And they shook hands. And he says, because face to face, you're two totally different people than you are when you have that separation.
Interesting, because this formula either creates courage or cowardice, right?
Yeah.
And so we'll use our example, vaccines and health. We were told that if you talk about something you want to talk about, that it limits the travel of what it is that you have to say. So the cost is we have to knowingly go into a show. If we want to talk about something, we are choosing to have it not go anywhere, right? Yeah. So the cowardice of doing that means that it's going to go unchanged. There are going to be topics that you don't want to, you've been punished through lack of travel that now you don't talk about, or you have now confidence in talking about it. You know, you're going to pay the cost and you're willing to pay the cost anyway. And you do it. And if everybody doesn't do it, then you are controlled by the people who set the rules, right? Mm-hmm. If you do it in spite of it and willing to pay the cost and consequence, and enough of you do it, then the rules have to change to conform to you. So if you want to teach people how to get their way, you have to be courageous, not through tyranny and not through violence and not through, rhetoric and politics. You have to be courageous enough to go out there, know what the due process is and what you're trying to get done, and stay in it until enough people join you who are also courageous. Now you have a standing army that gets it done. Yeah.
And I've mentioned before, like the day Charlie Kirk was killed, I was done with this. Like there was some time there that I was like, I'm going to talk to Joe and be like, I'm out. This is too dangerous. Not that I am in any way as well known as Charlie Kirk, not even on the same playing field. But the fact that, oh my God, how bad can this get? That there are psychos out there that will kill you for something you said that they don't agree with. And then the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, well, that's exactly how freedom of speech gets trampled and how these difficult discussions end and people keep other people down. And, if something is wrong, we want this idea of you speak up. I have a right to a voice. I have a right to say what I think. I have a right to protest. I have a right to call something out that isn't right. And if you don't out of fear, that's what they want. Mm-hmm. We're going to control you. We're going to make you afraid to speak up. And then that way we have control. And I'm like, bullshit. I'm not doing that.
Yeah. Well, we missed a couple of them here. They have entered that realm. It doesn't even seem very controversial. Also, think the ICE facilities you're mentioning is the one that is new called East Montana. It has a lot of code violations. Okay. Thank you, Chicken Conspiracy.
I don't know about that one. Yeah.
All right. Man, we went in politics too deep. Anything fun to talk about? Like anything?
I mean, every time I say fun, you're like, that's not fun. That's stupid.
Smart fun, not dumb fun. Anything?
I mean, you're not going to think it's fun, but it is.
As long as it's not ice cream flavors and chocolate.
It's been in the headlines.
Okay, fair enough.
Taylor Swift's new album.
Yeah.
So The Life of a Showgirl is out. All these Swifties are losing their minds. Everyone's like, oh my God, this album is amazing and she's amazing and everything's great. And I'm here to say, while I do feel that Taylor Swift is a talented artist and probably a marketing genius, I think all of her songs sound the same. I think they all sound the same. I don't think any of them are like wildly innovative, new, genius. Somebody was like, oh, the lyricism. Her lyrics are so in-depth. Really? Have you listened to any Taylor Swift lately?
No.
I wonder if BJ has. BJ might know what I'm talking about.
BJ's stock value will go down if he says he's listened to any Taylor Swift. I'm sorry. But I feel
like you kind of can't get away from it. I mean, it is everywhere. She's great at her business. She's great. I mean, breaks records all the time, obviously making money, selling out tours, caters to this audience. Like, she does it amazing. I don't fault her. And I'm not saying she's not a bad singer by any means. She's not a terrible songwriter. I just don't get it. I would love a Swiftie if you're on here explain to me the appeal that is Taylor Swift. What does she do different that other artists don't
Remember,
do?
you're in church right now and knowing that those songs are just not for you. And there are people that are loving it and are so glad it was released and love the drama with her and Travis and the whole thing. It's just concocted directly for them. And then rather than peeking in and giving some kind of shade on what they do, just go like your own music and have an appreciation for the business that she put together. And that's the extent of it.
How come you do that with this?
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm like, oh, I like holidays and Halloween, you're like, it's stupid. There's better way to spend your time. And you're never like, listen, oh, well, if that speaks to you and that's
you are the
jam.
Violent rioter of bringing up things to me. Do you think, let's just say, I'm going to deprive Joe of mentioning it's Tuesday Taco Day, right? Do you think
it was Taco Tuesday yesterday? It was National Taco Day.
I didn't know that.
It was.
But let's just say you put this master plan together. You would never mention those again. You know what would happen on the show?
What?
Nothing. They would just never get mentioned again. It's only when you say, hey, what do you think of Taco Tuesday? That then you bring the violence out in me. And I tell you how stupid I think Taco Tuesday is. That's it. You're responsible, not me.
You're such a gaslighter.
How?
Look what you made me do. Is that what you just said?
If you were like, I'm going to tell
you, I'm sorry you feel that way, but you made me.
You say the words, what is your opinion, right? What do you think of? And I'm sharing it. Had you not, if you said,
okay, so if I just say, I'm very excited for Halloween or fall or Christmas or Taco Tuesday, period, you'll be like, that's nice.
That's it. That's exactly how it would go down. And it's gone down that way many times. Many times.
Roll the tape.
Roll the tape.
Chicken says taco hater must be racist. You must be. What do you got? Something against other cultures?
Oh, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we all know historically, like we're both old enough now that we've lived in different eras of acceptability of things that you could say before and do before you can no longer say. So there was this teacher that was on recording singing happy birthday to a kid.
Oh, I know what you're talking about, but go on.
There's a second verse to the birthday song that we all sang.
As kids.
As kids, it was just part of the song.
Yeah.
Right? And it goes, happy birthday to you. You look like a monkey and you smell like one too. And this was sung to a child who was black. Now, the mom of the child said that part of the song is totally racist and this teacher is a racist. Where do you fall on the using, some historical verses and applying it today that is more culturally sensitive to those kind of things?
So if it were me in that setting, my brain probably would have said, not a good idea. Stick with happy birthday and move on.
Okay.
In that setting, because of today. But me, any other time and any other setting also feels that intent behind things matter.
Okay.
The intention was not to insult the child. The intention was not to imply anything that is in any way surrounding racism. It's a dumb song. We have it since childhood because it was meant to be silly. It in no way implies anything. It's just a song. And I think that mother was really reaching. I think that was a far, far reach to cry racism. That's what I think.
So if that teacher last week sang that same song to Betty Sue, who is a little white girl, then calling them a monkey and that they smell like a monkey, what was the charge there? Like, what was the teacher trying to say? So that would be a point and data point, whether or not that verse is sung for all people, or if she specifically said, then you can say that this song was specifically meant as an insult or, something said because of somebody's race. But the words do not automatically mean something. Okay.
Yeah.
So if I was like, there was a sign on the road and it was a residential sign and they don't want trucks to use their Jake brake, right? Or their engine retard, If they don't want the engine retard to be used, they would put no retard, right?
Yeah.
Now, the intent of that is to tell truck drivers not to use their engine retardant to slow their truck down on this road.
Mm-hmm.
Now, but it says retard on a sign. All right. Should I assume that whoever put that sign up was making an insult as a mother's driving down the road and she has a disabled special needs child in the back, that sign is an insult to her driving down that road? Or should we be smart enough to be able to divvy up and find out which ones were insults and which ones were language that had nothing to do with
just
it?
The word. It is the word used. The insult came after. Kids took a word that was in existence and made it an insult. I can say Jesus Christ and be talking about a historical person who lived named Jesus Christ.
Are you able to figure out which someone is doing? Like, do you get a license because if I say a word that even no matter what the context is, it's now a charge against you of some kind of crime? This lady's trying to get the other lady to lose her job, which means the school board can say that was really dumb. Don't sing that song again. Cool. I can do that. You've been given that. But there's going to be a level that you have to get beyond that really knows that she meant it in a way that was insulting to her. She was
trying to be offensive.
Exactly.
Or was just, I didn't even think of it that way. It's a silly song that we've all sang from.
Should we ruin lives over our sensitivity for someone using a word no matter the context? That's what is problematic. That's a real slippery slope.
Isn't there a dark history around the song Ring Around the Rosie?
Most of our nursery rhymes and kids songs have some dark weaves in there.
It's like, if you go back to its origin, it's dark or offensive or creepy or whatever. How many kids sing Ring Around the Rosie and there's
when
no
I was
intent?
Single digit kid, I'm singing songs from Greece, right? I didn't know what they meant. I was singing the freaking song, and I got older. I was like, holy shit, my mom let me get away with singing those freaking lyrics.
Yeah.
The innocents are that, you have to determine whether or not you sang it because it's a traditional thing to sing, or you were targeting someone and going after them because of their race.
Yeah. When I was a kid, so my mom has always worked with developmentally delayed adults. And when I was growing up, we were not allowed to say the word retarded.
Yes.
She taught us that it was offensive, that it's not the proper terminology anymore. Here is the proper terminology. Don't say that word. And if we said it in a derogatory way, like my brothers and I would call each other that word, we were really in trouble because we were meaning it to be derogatory. So as an adult now, I have this twinge. It's a twinge when I hear somebody use the word retarded, even when they are not meaning to be offensive. But there is a generation, especially older generations, that were taught that was the proper term. Now that it's no longer, now that we have different terminology, if I hear it, I can't really get mad at someone who used it in a way that they thought was correct. Now, could somebody come along and say, actually, the preferred terminology when discussing this matter is this? You can if you want to. And if they say F off, I'll use whatever word I want. Well, deal with that.
And the way that I process this stuff is I don't like people telling me what to do. In fact, when someone tells me what to do, it makes me want to do it even more.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, if somebody gives me a better word for something and I don't even need the other one, and somebody came along and said, hey, use XYZ word, and this one is actually better accepted and there's no cost to using it. It doesn't make anybody feel bad. And I incorporate it and I use it and I have no reason to go back to the other word. I'm cool with that because I don't care. I get hung up on stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I will, if you try to force me to, I will use that word in every freaking sentence that I want and can.
Yeah.
But if it's two considerate people, like I know that you and I are considerate with one another. If I said, hey, you telling me what day it is today, that really annoys me, and I wish you wouldn't do it anymore, then you can decide whether or not you do it anymore. Mm-hmm. And that buys you, then you making an ask of me and saying, Joe, when you do this, it makes me, feel worse than it needs to. Would you try not to? And then we shake hands and we have an agreement that you'll try not to do your thing and I'll try not to do my thing. And we have an agreement. We negotiated agreement of what we're going to do and what we're not going to do, with both of us being able to make concessions.
Yeah.
An authority is that I'm going to tell you what to do. You're going to tell me you're not going to tell me anything to do. And I'm going to rule over you as a power and control over your actions and your thoughts. That's the difference. Persuasion versus coercion. And I will not be coerced.
Yeah. I used to work for a family years ago when I first moved down south. They owned this salon where I worked, and they were British, and they were from the UK, and they had a lot of different words than we have here. And they would say something that used a word that sounds very offensive. And I'd be like, what? And they would repeat it and show me what they were talking about. I was like, oh, okay. You should know that word means something different here. And they would say, what? What is it? And I would explain it and say, oh, no, that's not what it means here. And it was like, just letting you know, you might get some looks if you say that in public. And it wasn't like, oh my God, don't say that, or you're a terrible person. Because I know what they're talking about. They're not being offensive. They're not calling someone a hurtful name. They're talking about this item, and that is their word for it. I simply said, you don't know this, but here, that word means this. So if you get any weird looks, that's why.
Yeah.
Change it if you want. Don't if you don't. It's still your intention
that is
behind
proper
it.
To have consideration for other people. And as long as you're negotiating with people who are equally willing to be considerate back at you, if you're with them, somebody walks in here and they say, hey, my preferred pronouns are shim or z or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And, I appreciate it if you refer to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a request. And I can say yes or no. And then I could say, hey, by the way, when you walk in here and you're wearing stripper clothes, that I don't really like that. Can you wear something different when you come down here? Now it's two people, had consideration.
Yeah.
I said it. You can say yes or no. You can say it. I can say yes or no. And you don't wear the stripper clothes and I use your Zim pronoun. We're both happy. But it's, like I said, only when one side feels like they have superiority, they have the moral superiority where they can make you do things, is where you get. My biggest objection with liberals is wanting to control people and make you do things. And that is exactly the ingredients that you get to the fascism and authoritarianism that you say in words that you disagree with, but at the same time, building the stew that creates authoritarianism and fascism.
I was in a situation last night. I'd love to know how you would have handled it.
Yeah. Oh, it would be badly. It would be badly.
Maybe not. I was at a Mexican restaurant last night because it was National Taco Day and it was Taco Tuesday. And so we went out to eat. And we go to this place all the time. And like, we've even gotten like friendly with the servers and everything. Well, they have TVs all around and they had a horror movie playing on the TVs. And I was with my kids and part of me is like, oh, I'd love for that not to be on this giant screen right here. So I didn't say anything. Maybe it won't be bad. And then very gory scene. And I'm just like, guys, stop. Don't look. And everything in me was like, should I say, I'm so sorry. Would you mind changing the channel until we leave? And I didn't. And I didn't say anything. And I just kept making my kids stop looking at the TVs because I didn't want to be like a Karen or that person that's like, well, why'd you bring your kids out then? We want to have a horror movie on our TV screen. What would you have done? Would you have said, would you mind maybe turning the channel? You do have like a violent horror film on and I'm here with my children in a family establishment. Or would you be like, don't say anything. You chose to come there. And I will say too, there's a bar side and a non-bar side. We didn't ask to be sat there, but they sat us on the bar side because I'm pretty sure the TVs on the other end are the same thing. What would you have done in that situation?
I would have shared with whoever seated me and says, hey, can we either change the channel, reseat me somewhere else, or we'll just go somewhere else. And it wouldn't be like a leverage thing. If they like the channel on there and everybody's enjoying it and they're just, I don't want it and I'm not going to be there. I'm willing to do all three on my end. I'll share with you what I'm willing to do. You change it, I'm happy. You reseat me, I'm happy. I leave, I'm happy. End of story.
Yeah. It's sort of like, hey, any other time, don't mind the scary movie, but have my young kids here, don't really want
Yeah,
them
I wouldn't
watching
need.
that.
I would share enough information. I wouldn't defend it. I wouldn't, be vulnerable in that moment. I would just tell them 3 things. Choose one of them. It's up to you. I'm cool either way.
Yeah, I have no spine. I just made us all eat with our heads down. Don't look.
All right, we're gonna wrap up here today. What is today? Wednesday? Yeah.
Wednesday.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. We'll catch you here tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you for listening to this show on Youngstown Studio. This is original Youngstown content. Feel free to share our videos and tell your friends about us. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube